This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system.
Designed by software experts passionate about cannabis and the success of the industry, Regrow is built to automate manual tasks, reduce costs, and avoid shortages by creating dynamic workflows that maximize yields and increase profitability for your business. The first of its kind software leverages components of leading ERP and supply chain systems with the necessary compliance of the cannabis industry. So it's time to stop managing your manufacturing, distribution, and cultivation processes using whiteboards, spreadsheets, and email. And instead, talk to the team at Regrow. They'll help you automate your business, scale effectively, and make the supply chain work for you. Visit their website at regrow.io. That's regrow.io. Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Loriel Alegrete. She's the founder and CEO at 40 Tons. Loriel Alegrete, the founder and CEO at 40 Tons. How are you, ma'am?
I am well, Kevin. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's Friday. It's been a good week, productive week, and I'm ready to relax now this weekend. So
Right. I understand. We've been super busy, with 40 tons and all the great things that we have accomplished and all the even greater things that are in the pipeline that's happening. So, yeah, super excited about that.
yeah, I've been watching a lot of your, the efforts and the things that 40 Tons has been doing, and y'all have made a lot of great progress, when it comes to righting the wrongs that have been written, within the cannabis industry for years now, right? And before we started recording, I know we talked about Corvain Cooper, who was recently on the podcast, and how he was released on clemency during the Trump presidency. And then I've also had Evelyn LaChapelle on as well, who was also involved in that same marijuana conspiracy, right?
Yes, they're all in that indictment, correct? Yes, they
Yeah.
are.
So it's just great to hear from them firsthand, and to see organizations and companies like 40 Tons and others in the industry really focusing on that restorative justice and social equity component of it. So to kick things off, L'Oreal, why don't you just talk about 40 Tons and the origin of the company, like the story, and why you're so passionate about this?
Okay, so 40 Tons is a social justice premium cannabis brand that's geared toward bringing awareness to the Black and Brown communities that have been affected by the weed laws, right?
Hmm.
So, where I stand as the CEO is I was directly affected when my husband went to jail, for a cannabis charge. And I had to be the strong breadwinner and, mother and father to our three children now. So I know the struggle firsthand when your loved one goes to jail and you're left to pick up the pieces, and all the things that come with that. So 40 tons was um, 40 tons was let me put it this way. 40 Tons was established to create a platform for women like myself to give support to the loved ones that are in prison, right? So when you support 40 Tons, you go on our website, you buy a merchandise, you know that part of the proceeds will go to that prisoner, whether it's to get them something that they need, like a pair of eyeglasses or telephone commissary for that prisoner, or collect telephone calls to communicate with their family members. So this was an important thing that I also can give back to the community.
Right. And so, yeah, and that's fascinating. And so it all kind of started with your husband, that kind of firsthand personal experience. Your husband gets put in prison for, I mean, and when was that? How long ago was that? And how long did he
Uh,
serve?
He served, his sentence was 3 years. And so that he served that 3 years. Corvain also, he got sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And then Evelyn LaChapelle, I believe her sentence was 87 months. So that was really a tough time for me, having to struggle with 3 children and husband in prison for that length of time. And that was about 7 years ago, 8
7
years
years
ago.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't imagine, like you're saying, like from the mother's perspective, right? Like, okay, first off, we all know how ridiculous cannabis is for it being Schedule 1 narcotic, right? In the
Right.
eyes of the federal government, but not only how ridiculous that is, but when someone you love, like your husband, is charged and put in prison, like at that point, you're taking on a lot of responsibility. You're wearing all the hats now. So
Yeah.
40 tons, kind of like you were talking about, originated from that experience that you had firsthand to kind of help and support those other mothers and women who are affected with their spouses being arrested for cannabis use. Or
Right. It's mothers, it's women's, it's daughters. So it was just this aha moment that I had where, I'm in the courtroom, Anthony gets handed down his sentence. Um, and then Corvain gets handed down his sentence, and Corvain and I are friends, obviously, as well, over 20 years. So it is me and feeling like the system did not, justice was not served, right, for my friend Corvain, who's off, ambassador for 40 tons. For him to get that harsh sentence I felt helpless for him, because you have to have, money to hire the correct lawyers to let your voice be heard. And I knew at that point that it was just an unjust system, and that I needed to do my part, whatever it was, to bring awareness and hopefully a change in the future.
hmm. And let's dive into exactly what happened to Corvain, because again, he's been on the podcast. I highly recommend y'all check that out because you hear from him firsthand.
Yeah.
But at a high level, he talks about like how he was brought. So he was involved with that marijuana conspiracy, right? But
Right.
then like years later, like he had forgotten about it, and one of the guys that was involved in that same conspiracy was put in prison. And then out of the blue one day, that person says, you know what, Corvain Cooper needs to be in here with me. So he basically just called Corvain out being an accessory to it. And then from there, they didn't even, like, the law enforcement and the investigators, they didn't even do any type of investigation when it comes to like really looking into what Corvain's involvement was. They kind of just took that guy's word for it and put Corvain in prison, and they sentenced him for life. Isn't that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Anthony and Corvain, they had, completely quit the game, if you will, as far as selling marijuana. And this was, Anthony had already been enrolled at UNLV, doing well there. We moved to Las Vegas. Corvain had his clothing store in Los Angeles, so they had completely gotten out of the game. And then years later is when that individual that Corvain had spoke about, because we don't want to say his name because we just don't want to say his name.
He's
So
like
that,
Voldemort.
yeah, so that individual, he gets arrested, and he now points everybody who was ever in his circle. And that is solely to reduce his sentence, right? So, yes, that did happen. And
So Anthony was also a victim of that same approach of what he did.
yeah, yes,
That's
yes, he
that's how
was.
Anthony went to prison. Okay.
Correct, right? Because we had already we left California. We were in Las Vegas, several years. He, I think probably at that time he had already had his bachelor's degree, or he was just finishing up. And then that's when the indictment got handed down, and then you get to see who facilitated all of the madness. So yeah.
So if they're both brought in, like Anthony and Corvain, and it seems all over the place, like why did Corvain get a longer sentence than Anthony?
Um,
Besides the obvious,
I mean,
probably racial reasons, you know what I mean? But
right.
I don't, you know.
Why Corvain got the harsher sentence than Anthony? I believe it was Corvain wanting to fight for what he felt was his right, what he felt he hadn't, sold anything in umpteen years. And there's no way that they're going to pin all this amount on me. Like, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. My hands are clean. God knows this, right? So I think that's where that's where Corvain's headspace was at.
Mm-hmm.
And so, without any proof, like you were just saying earlier, right? Like, how did the government, where was this proof, this investigation that so-called happened that never really happened? So that's where I think his thought process was. And not to mention lawyers also suggesting that, hey, you got a fair shot here. You should really fight this, right? So I think that's what happened. And then for Anthony, he had a lot of accolades behind him, finishing school. We were heavily involved in the community. We had our nonprofit organization that was thriving, a lot of respect in the community. So that may have very well helped Anthony a little bit more. So his sentence was drastically less, and he ultimately took the deal, if you will,
Right.
from the federal government. Right.
Right. Well, tell me, what did you feel the day the feds show up randomly? Like you said, they left the game years later.
Yeah.
They show up at your door and they apprehend Anthony. Like, what is going through your head?
It is it's a cold, like it was a cold, dreary day. I think it was like drizzling outside, so it was like hell, an overcast was happening. We were leaving our gated community, just driving through. You've got to go like 15 miles an hour or something like that. And then the swarm of these unmarked cars just cut us off in every angle, right? And I instantly think, oh, they've got the wrong person. Like, they for sure have the wrong person, like, right? And then we're ordered to exit the vehicle, get on your knees, then also on
Guns drawn, probably, right? Like,
guns drawn. Yeah, guns drawn. Our hands are up. We're ordered to lay down on the ground. It's raining. I'm crying. I'm looking at Anthony and I'm just like, what is this? Like, this could not be. And I'm asking the officers, the agents, like, what is this about? Who are you looking for? And then it's basically, shut up. You know what you've done. You'll find out soon enough. Like, those were the types of responses that I was getting, so.
and meanwhile, it's again like fast forward, it's like 3 or 4 years later. So you're like,
Yeah.
no, I really don't know what you're
Right.
talking.
Right. It's like I was totally clueless. I'm thinking, like, this was so far behind us in the past. Like, there's no way, like, this is a mistake. So that was the scene. And then Anthony is taken off. Well, we both are put in handcuffs on the ground. Anthony is.
Are your kids with you?
No, our kids were not with us. I think we were at grandma's house at the time, So thank goodness for that they didn't have to see that, because that would have been traumatizing. So then they take Anthony away. They sit me on the curb. They undo the handcuffs, and they tell me that somebody will be in contact with me, be on your way, basically. And then they take Anthony away. So, yeah. And you're still left with so many questions, and I'm still stuck on this. This definitely is, they have the wrong person, because no one showed me any paperwork, like you see on TVs, or, the Law and Order sitcoms, where it's like, here's your warrant, and, your name is on it, and it's very clear. There was none of that.
Jeez.
So
that's what I was thinking. Like, as you're talking, I'm wondering, like, are law enforcement required to tell you why they're arresting you?
that's what I thought, but maybe that was just my understanding from watching TV and movies.
Right.
But
Well,
not
it sounds like they should, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I guess maybe surrounding the charge, maybe that's what it was because it's a conspiracy, right? So I don't know, but no, no one told me until much later what this was all about, what the charge was,
Jeez.
So
So you're apprehended. You get, and then so you're in, right? I'm sure you're taken to the precinct or the holding tanks or whatever, and
well,
then
Anthony is not me.
okay.
I am let go, right? Handcuffs come off of me and I am let go. I have no paperwork. I have nothing to prove that this just happened. So, and then I later, I get a
Nothing to prove that that happened. So you're you're left with no husband. He's
yeah,
taken in. You're literally they took the handcuffs off you, like, and they don't even give you like a paperwork that says where to find him or what to do
no,
next. Or that is
no,
insane. It
no.
sounds like a like how like an illicit drug cartel would operate or something. You know?
Yes, yes, yes. You're right. You're right, Kevin. Right. Yeah. I think I got a phone call later that night, and then that's when it just all snowballed from there.
Wow. So you get the news that night. You
Mhm.
obviously are like, okay, like this is serious, this is real. So are you like I mean, I would imagine at that point you're having to juggle a lot of different things, right? I mean, the kids, like everyday livelihood, worrying about your husband who's been apprehended, like what's
Yeah.
next? I mean, and that's kind of where maybe probably the light bulb moment, for lack of a better word, comes off for 40 tons, right?
Yes, exactly. I knew, like I said, I knew there had to be something done. Like I had to do something. I just didn't know where to start, how to start, where to begin, right? But I knew something must be done. So just to take you to why we called it the company 40 tons. I don't know if
That's what I
Corey.
wanted to ask. I wanted to ask that. Yeah, tell me where the name originated. Like why
Yeah.
40 tons? Yeah.
Okay, so Corvain, is in prison at this time, obviously, and he's exhausted all of his appeals. I think you get three, and so Anthony and him and I are knowing that we should form a company. And then we went all over the place of what we should call it and all these things. And then it was Corvain who came up with the idea of calling it 40 tons. And I was a little apprehensive about it because at the time, you know, me, Anthony, and some other people in the cannabis space, like in the nonprofit sector, was working behind the scenes to hopefully get Corvain a part in our clemency, right? So my thing was calling it 40 tons because that was the amount of the weed that was in question for the entire conspiracy for them that
Wow.
Corvain ultimately got charged with and got sentenced to that life sentence. And I thought, hey, maybe we shouldn't piss off the government and call it that because we're kind of like in these uncharted waters here.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Especially when it's real time, like, if it's years later or whatever, but I could see your concern of like, look, we're still going through this. Like, that's kind of a
yes.
slap in their face, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yes. But Corvain saw the vision. He said, you know what, like there's nothing more that they can do to me, basically, And
Fair,
so
that's a
when he
fair
took
point.
that approach, I was like, okay, let's roll with it. And so then he came up with the name 40 tons.
I love that. That
Yeah.
is so that and sometimes it needs to be, very for lack of a better word again, aggressive or in your face type,
Yeah.
branding to get your point across, and I can respect Corvain when he said like, look, I got nothing to lose here. They've already, ruined my life basically, so,
Right.
he didn't have much to lose at that point,
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And when he explained it to me like that, I was in. I was in. I was like, okay, there's your name. Fine. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's how we came about it.
He used his negotiation skills, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
L'Oreal, tell me what it was like with your kids while Anthony was in prison. And it's a two-part question. Like, how did you talk with your kids about what had happened to their dad?
Mhm.
And then also, like, what was your own perspective on, like, I'm assuming you're in California, right?
Yes, we are now. Yeah.
So seeing like all this explosion of like the legal cannabis market and like all these different states coming online and medical use, and yet your husband's in prison, right? Like what were you thinking, and how did that make you feel?
Um, I had a very difficult time. It was a struggle. I didn't know whether I wanted to tell my children initially and just get it out of the way, or pretend that daddy was away, and that he'd be back, soon. But I also knew I had to be real with myself and not live in this fantasy land, that when dad calls, never mind that crazy recording that comes on the phone, just talk to your dad, he's at work, right? Right. So I knew I had to be informative for them. I
Hmm.
had to be strong for them. You know, it was a very dark time. And then they were so young. And ultimately, I did tell them. And there was a lot of questions. And I made it as simple as possible because at the time they were like 5 and 8 or
Oh
something
wow,
like
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah,
they're really young, yeah.
yeah, right. And then so I let them know that daddy did something very bad a long time ago, and we
Did
thought it
you
was a
did you think that he did something bad? Now that we're like we live in the time we live in now?
um I think my head was in the clouds, and I always worked. So it wasn't like I solely always, he was the breadwinner the whole entire, we've been married 20 years now. So, and together 22. So it wasn't that he was that, but at that time, he did maybe, more than 50% of the income, right? So I didn't think it was um, all that bad that he was doing that. I mean, because I knew it had the healing properties in the plant. I knew, my mother who was a breast cancer victim, like I knew, this plant had these healing properties. So I wasn't stuck on like, oh, that was a terrible thing you did. Like, like as if he were selling another terrible narcotic drug,
Right. Right.
So no, not exactly. But
But I mean, at the time, the federal regulation and whatnot, and you have a family, right? So
yeah,
there's that there's that line of like, okay, we got to be, we don't want to take certain risks either that can jeopardize, right? So
right.
I could see you coming from that perspective. So sorry, continue. So you were talking to your children about it, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking to my boys about it, and I tell them, daddy did something wrong, and he now has to go and pay for that. It's like when you do something wrong in like I made it into a lesson on their level. When you do something wrong in life, and you have to take your punishment like a big boy,
Hmm.
and then you have to say you're sorry about it. So daddy is sorry that he has to be away from you guys, but he loves you, and we will get through this. So that's where I left it with them, and then other questions obviously arose as they got older, and school, and other milestones in their life that he obviously missed. So
Right. Well, so okay, so that was when they were 5 and 8 years old. So now, fast forward, what is the conversation like today now that Anthony's out?
okay. They're much older now, and strangely enough, they don't really harp on his prison time. They um they really are concerned about how, and my oldest one said this too, like, how the hell did you survive, mom? Like, I have no, like, I had no idea you were going through this. Like, now he realizes it, right? He's like, how? And then our middle one is like, mom, like, wow. He's like, I don't know if you know what this saying is because you're kind of old, but mom, you are the goat. And I'm just like, I look like a goat. Like, I don't know what you mean. He's like, no, no, just believe. So And then he broke it down to me what the acronyms of it was. And I was like,
The greatest
oh,
of all time. Yeah.
right, right. So they were just astonished that I took care of them. I never left them. And I was just this strong rock. They were like, we never saw you cry, Mom. Did you ever cry? This was so sad for you. And I said, believe you me, many times in the shower when you guys were asleep, I bawled. Like,
Wow.
they're like, we never saw it. So they appreciate that I was so strong for them.
That is so awesome. That's got to make you feel so good. I mean,
Yeah.
that was such a difficult time. I can imagine
Mhm.
both for Anthony Corvain and yourself, right? But to come out of it and then to hear your own kids like, wow, mom, like that was really something. And and they didn't even mention like the fact that you started your own business and there's other things that you did outside of just caring for them, which is a whole responsibility in itself, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. So it makes me feel really good that like, hey, I did do my job all right. The job still never ends as when you're a parent, but I did okay so far. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, clearly they have a role model to look up to.
Yeah, yeah, and they are all on board with 40 tons and all of our, stuff we have going on too. So yeah, they're excited about this next chapter.
That's so great. I want to ask you this. If you could give a grade for the cannabis industry in the United States when it comes to their efforts in restorative justice and social equity, what grade would you give the industry right now?
Ooh, um, I'd give it a C.
See?
Yeah, right in the middle.
Average. Okay. Why
Yeah,
is that?
yeah, I'd give it a very low C. Yeah,
What?
low.
Why is that? Why low C?
Um, I feel that they are aware of all the issues that surrounding the industry. Um, they do acknowledge there are, a lot of issues, and that they're taking little tiny baby steps to try to correct them. And and I'm still hopeful that one day we will get there and get to that A.
Right.
There's just a lot more work that has to be done on both parts.
Right. Right. And we know with like state, local, federal governments, right? Things are slow also on that end, and
Right.
it's one thing for the industry to kind of really move the needle when it comes to restorative justice and social equity, but that's a whole other conversation in the eyes of the federal government or even the
Yes,
state government.
exactly, exactly. I mean, former President Donald Trump, he gave me a little bit more hope that things could change. When he gave Corvain the presidential clemency. So that also allowed me to have just a little bit more hope that we're on the right track.
Right, right. Yeah, and I don't want to go off on a whole, Trump Biden tangent, but
Yeah, I know.
I will say that, it does seem like, Trump was more favorable from the offset with cannabis than it seems like Biden is currently, in my opinion. You had the 2018 Farm Bill pass, while he was in office, the
Yeah.
clemency, pardons and whatnot, and some of the moves that the administration is making now, it's kind of makes me wonder what game is being played, at the federal level to just get this thing done because it seems like there's so many benefits.
Right, right, exactly. I mean, I think it probably is financial.
Right,
You
right.
know, trying to get a hold of the market, and it's financial. That's what I think the ultimate issue is.
I agree. The super PAC money, the lobbying, the
Mhm.
protecting interests of industries, yeah, and that's kind of what started prohibition, right? Back in the
Right, for alcohol. Yeah,
back in the 1930s, and people of color, like we talked about earlier, black and brown people
yeah,
specifically, were targeted, right? As kind of the bad doers of this drug.
yeah, yeah.
which is unfortunate. And we're seeing it play out, 100 years later. But it's great to see yourself, L'Oreal, with 40 tons and others in the industry making this a top priority, because like we've talked about over and over again, these are wrongs that needs to be written right at this point, and we can't have a thriving industry with people making billions and billions of dollars when there have been lives ruined for the plant.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, what can the industry do to kind of end on a positive note? Like what can we all do, and what do you want to leave the listeners with as we wrap up?
I think what we can do as a whole is, be aware of all the changes that are happening. You know, stay informed. You know, sign petitions. With organizations that are worthy, like change.org. You know, um, create a more buzz surrounding the industry. Um, and support 40 tons. I hope to have 40 tons be not just a great brand that's around for a long time, but a brand that matters, a brand that actually does do the work, you know um, and just continue to have hope that the cannabis industry would change for Black women in general. The licensings, that statistic changes, because there's a very small amount of Black women who hold the licenses, whether it's for cultivating or growing or distribution or whatever. And help where you can, and support where you can. Like I said, whether you're going to sign a petition that takes all of 60 seconds, or you're going to donate your time, or you're going to donate your money, or you're going to connect one person with the other, and just try to make this time on earth really count for yourself, because
Hmm.
it's short.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I'm hopeful as well. I mean, I've said it over and over, is that we're uniquely positioned right now as an industry as a whole, because we can do things differently than other industries have done for quite some time now, right? Legacy industries.
Yes.
And you mentioned, the diversity and inclusion, Black female, getting licenses and just more entrance to just different people, right? Because the plant does touch almost everyone, right, over the age of 21. So,
Right, right.
um,
Exactly. And just a side note, I'm doing my due diligence, yes, starting 40 tons and building it in the infrastructure and aligning myself with the right people in the industry. But that's just not enough for me. So what I'm also going back to school to get my RN degree. So that's, another level for me, another layer for me, that I can not only discuss and talk about the plant, but also let the healing properties of the plant and in regards to the whole medical field. Right. So I'm just going. I can't stop.
good for you. And you know what? Talk about two different areas of the industry where are super important. I mean, the like you said, the awareness of restorative justice, social equity, but then the awareness of the therapeutic and medicinal benefits of the plant, because that is another thing that is not as commonly known right now, and needs to be told, you know.
Right, right. It does. It's so important. And I don't want to just be able to skim over it. If I'm speaking to someone, I want to be able to directly let you know, I know what I'm talking about. I'm trained in what I'm talking about. This does A, B, and C for you. So yeah.
Well, that's another feather that you can put in your cap with all the amazing things that you do in the eyes of your boys. You're like Superman, Superwoman to them. So,
Yeah.
keep it up,
Thank
L'Oreal.
you.
And I really appreciate the work that you do and what 40 Tons is doing. And yeah, I'm just gonna continue to support y'all and watch your progress and
Yeah.
continue to do great things for the industry.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Kevin, for taking the time to chat with me. I appreciate you. And maybe in the near future, you'll have all four of us that's, in 40 tons, Anthony Corvée, myself, Natalia, and Evelyn. And, so hopefully in the very near future.
Let's do a reunion show. I would love
Yes,
it. Everyone together. Yes.
yes, that sounds good. That sounds
Cool.
good. Yeah, we've got great things in the pipeline, a lot of collaboration. So watch out. 420 will be really big for us.
I love it. Well, if you guys have any major announcements and you want to just get together and touch base every now and then, let's do it. I'll be in touch to get to do that reunion show. I like that idea. That'll be fun.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. It was nice chatting with you.
Nice chatting with you. Hey, one last thing. Where can people find y'all's website and social media if they want to learn more?
Oh, okay. If you want to learn more, our website is 40tons.co. So that's 40tons.co. If you'd like to buy some of our great merch that we have online. Um, and then our social media is 40 Tons Brand. That's on IG and Facebook. And then if you wanted to take a further step in supporting, we have some reentry efforts being made for Corvain Cooper. So he also has a GoFundMe, which is Corvain Cooper, and you've got the story on there. And I think it was CBS interview and Vanity Fair interview. If you kind of wanted to hear a little bit more intimate details about his story, if you'd like to make a donation there. So thanks everyone for your support, and thank you, Kevin.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, L'Oreal. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I know that the audience enjoyed listening as well.
All
So
right, thank you. Have a good one.
thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.